Welcome to the Growth and Resiliency Speaker Series brought to you by the Growth Catalyst Program in collaboration with Alberta Innovates, the province's innovation engine. The Speaker Series is supported in part by the Government of Canada as part of the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. Led by Mount Royal University's Institute for Innovation Entrepreneurship, the Growth Catalyst is an intensive program designed to spark the creation and set the foundation for executing a growth strategy by CEOs and their senior leadership teams. I'm delighted today to welcome Michael Bungay Stanier, and I'm going to explain a little bit about what he's going to do with you today. He's a force for change, essentially. So he's best known for the book, The Coaching Habits. If any of you have read it, it's absolutely fantastic. I've got my copy here, well used. Sold close to 1 million copies and has thousands of 5-star reviews online. His latest book, The Advice Trap, is all about what it takes to tame your advice monster. He founded the Box of Crayons learning and development company that helps organizations move from advice-driven to curiosity-led. They've trained hundreds and thousands of managers to be more coach-like, and their clients range from Microsoft all the way to Gucci. Michael actually left Australia about 30 years ago to be a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University, which his only significant achievement was falling in love with a Canadian, which is why he now lives in Toronto, having spent time in Boston and London. And so we have a little bit in common. And the piece we have in common certainly isn't the Rhodes Scholar. Balancing out these moments of success, he was banned from his graduation for the balloon incident. Was sued by one of his law school professors for defamation, and his first published piece of writing was a Harlequin Romanesque story involving a misdelivered letter called The Mail Delivery. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Michael Bungay Stanier to the floor, and over to you, Michael.
Brilliant. Look, I'm so happy to be here, excited to be working with you. As soon as I got the call from Simon and Khaled and the team say, hey, would you like to come and be part of this with us? I was like, absolutely. This sounds like important work, cool people. I'm really happy to be here. Now, I've got no slides. This is a slide-free presentation. I do have little bits of paper that I'm holding up to my camera. So there's the title of what we're doing, the 5-question leader. And by leader, a little asterisk next to it there, I mean anybody who interacts with other human beings sometime, some part of their work. So you don't have to be the boss, you don't have to be the founder, you don't have to be a COO. If you interact with other human beings, I've got something for you in this session. Now, I just want to check with Simon and Shane. I'm not seeing myself on camera. Are you seeing me on camera okay?
Everything is perfect.
Simon, perfect. All right, that sounds great. It means I'm working slightly blind because I can't see myself, but quite frankly, that's probably a good thing. You know, that kind of weird Zoom experience we all have of watching ourselves on screen endlessly? This is a bit liberating. So, look, if I had to say that I'm trying to do one thing with you while I'm here, it's probably this. It's to unweird coaching. And we're going to get into what I mean by that. I think coaching is a really powerful technology that serves your organization, that serves you, and serves those that you lead. But you've got to understand how to make it an everyday, unweird part of how you operate. Because at the moment, coaching shows up with a bit too much baggage. But here's what I need to tell you. This is not 1 hour of Michael monologuing at you while you sit around and hang out. Not at all. This is a pretty interactive, very practical webinar. And we start right away. So I need you to get the chat box up, the group chat box, because we're going to be using that a lot. And I've got a question for you. This is how I want to start. And it's a question about how you're showing up for this. So you need to give me a score between 1 and 7. 1 is low, 7 is high. And the question I've got for you is here. How focused do you plan to be with me during this webinar? How focused? Because let's face it, webinars are rife with distraction, particularly as I know you've already done some work this morning and you'll do some work this afternoon. So you're ripe for distractions. So let me tell you what I mean by that. One is, look, I mean to be fully disengaged during this whole webinar. There's something burning in this corner over there. The kids are playing in that corner over there. There's a sweeping herd of wildebeest in the other corner. I've got drums going. and I'm texting people on 2 different phones at the moment. That's a 1. A 7, on the other hand, is like you're showing up with a real intent to focus. You've shut down things on your computer. You've got the noise canceling headphones on. You've thrown the kids out of the office. You're bringing a real intention and a real purpose to it. So let's see some numbers. 7s and 6s rolling in, some 5s. Sandra's coming in with a 9. I'm not hiring Sandra as an accountant, but I like her enthusiasm. 9 out of 7. That's fantastic. And Dallas is joining Sandra in a 9, so that's excellent. Hey, Simon, you're going to be kind of coming in and out as a kind of co-host with me today. Let me ask you, what number are you showing up with? How are you scoring yourself out of 7 in terms of how focused you intend to be?
I'm going to be a 15 for you, Michael.
15. All right. I love your enthusiasm. Look, I don't mind what number you give yourself. The choice is yours entirely. You're an adult. I'm an adult. You get to choose how you show up on these things. But here's my one request for you. Make an adjustment to your environment that gives you a better chance of hitting the number you want to hit. If you're a 2, you can kind of make your bed comfy and lie down, get ready for a nap. If you're a 9, you're like, okay, I've locked the door. I've shut down this. I've moved my phone out of reach so I can't check my phone during the boring bits. There won't be any boring bits. Whatever you're doing, make an adjustment where you are at the moment so you're more likely to hit the number that you want to hit yourself. Because let's face it, you are giving me an hour of your life. You're never going to get this hour back again. I want it to be a good investment. I want you to walk out of here thinking, man, that was really good. That's helping me find more time, feel less overwhelmed, build a team that's more engaged, stay better focused on the stuff that really matters. I'm going to teach all of that to you in this next hour. Just want you to be ready for it. So this session is called the 5-question leader. So you are thinking to yourself, Michael, bring on your 5 questions. Let's see if they're as good as you seem to think they are. And honestly, I think they are pretty good. I mean, this book I wrote, The Coaching Habit, it's sold almost 1 million copies now, which is particularly sweet because I spent 3 years pitching it to a publishing company that kept turning me down. So in the end, I self-published it. So not only have I sold a lot of books, I feel morally superior and smug at the same time. So that's excellent. And we've trained hundreds of thousands of managers, Microsoft, Gucci, TD, TELUS, all sorts of companies. So I think we can use the tools that we've seen work with them, help you out as well in this important part of your growth journey, which is you've got traction, but how do you start really accelerating? How do you start really making a difference? But before I give you the 5 questions, we've got to start somewhere else. We've got to start on the 3 vicious circles that managers and leaders and team members like you are facing every day. I'm going to go through the 3 circles, and then at the end, I'm actually going to ask you which of the 3 vicious circles feels most real for you right now, most real for you. So here we go. Vicious circle number 1 is an over-dependent team, an over-dependent team. So here's what the vicious circle kind of looks like, what it feels like. The more they come to you for answers, the more you give them the answers. But the more you give them the answers, the more they come to you for the answers. But then the more they come to you for the answers, the more they... And so it goes. And before you know it, somehow you have sucked all sense of self-sufficiency and autonomy from this team. They're slowly draining you of energy and life. They've lost any sense of independence. And you're thinking to yourself, look, I'm just trying to help. But what's happened? I hired these really capable people, and somehow they've become less capable under my watch. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, this is exactly true for me, and you're actually sitting with your team, don't look at them. I mean, that's slightly uncool. Don't point any fingers just yet, but it's useful to understand. Does that feel true for you? Are you noticing an over-dependent team? That's vicious circle number 1. Vicious circle number 2 is a sense of overwhelm. Sense of overwhelm. I know this will ring true for some of you. This is what it looks like and sounds like. The more that ends up on your plate, the more you lose focus on the stuff that really matters. The more you lose focus on the stuff that really matters, the more that ends up on your plate. The more that ends up on your plate, the more you lose focus. And then you're stuck into this snowballing effect. So you get that, I don't know, that slightly fluttery feeling in your chest, which is like, I will never be on top of things ever again. Even if I never sleep again. Even if I do email for the rest of my life, I'm never going to see the bottom of my inbox. I've got emails there dating back to 1972 that I haven't replied to yet. There's that sense of there's always too much. So number one, over-dependent team. Number two, a sense of overwhelm. Here's a number three. It's a sense of disconnect. Disconnected from the purpose of your company. Now, this might not be as common with all of you because I know you're in relatively small companies at the moment, so there's a kind of better line of sight to the work that you want to be doing and the difference you want to be making in the world. But just, I'll bring it to life for you. The less impact you have, the more you kind of give up and you resign yourself to what's going on. The more you give up and resign yourself to what's going on, the less impact you have, less impact, more resignation, less impact. And in some ways, it's like you're just giving up. You're saying, look, I'm a small cog in a machine here. I don't hate my job. I'm busy. I get paid well enough. But I've kind of lost the what Simon Sinek would call the why of the work, the purpose of the work. So there we go. Those are the three vicious circles. Sense of over-dependent team, a sense of overwhelm, over-dependent, overwhelm, and then a sense of disconnect. My bet is that all three of them ring true to some extent with you, but I'm curious, in the chat box, please, which of those three vicious circles felt most real for you right now? Let's see it in the chat box. And Simon, let me call you back on and ask you, which of those three vicious circles felt most real for you right now? Kind of rings a bell.
Yeah, I think I'm connected to the purpose for sure of what we're doing. I actually don't really necessarily always have a team to delegate to.
Sure.
So what that can mean is that you can feel overwhelmed as a consequence of them. So I almost feel like, it's probably number two, but wanting and needing a team to support.
Nice. And I'm seeing a bunch of things going through in the chat, which is wonderful. Thanks, everybody, for participating. It makes it a richer experience. And you're also getting the wisdom of the group here as well. So it's a kind of additional layer of the learning. What are you noticing from the chat, Simon? What are you seeing there? Any patterns showing up?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are coming back with suggesting that they're potentially overwhelmed with what they're doing, for sure. And, we're living in this time now, Michael, of this efficiency. It feels like hyper-efficient world, doesn't it? That we can actually do more. We feel like we're working longer hours. So to what extent this is becoming an even more compacted phenomenon or not is interesting.
Yeah, totally. When I've done this with lots of people, and definitely the overwhelm is the one that's kind of got the most resonance across most people. There's very few people these days hitting Friday afternoon going, I'm just going to play Tetris for a couple of hours because I've just got nothing else to do. Everybody's like, oh, there's always stuff that's slightly falling off the edge of my table or risk of being broken. But what I also notice, if I'm doing this live, in the good old days when I used to do it live, I go, does anybody anybody have all three ring true? And at least a third of the room go, yeah. I totally see how this, in some ways, I've got an over-dependent team. They become too needy. They're not as confident and as competent and as self-sufficient as I would like them to be. Definitely the overwhelm. And, honestly, even if you're a CEO, even if you're the founder of a company, there's a way that you can lose sight of the purpose, the why of the work, because you get swept into the day-to-day just trying to make it all happen and make it all work. And you lose that source of energy that the purpose can give you. So thank you, everybody, for what's coming through. Really lovely. And I bet some of you at least are thinking, okay, the three vicious circles, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the pain. Michael, can these 5 questions help me with these 3 vicious circles? And the answer is, of course. Of course the 5 questions can help you with the 3 vicious circles. In fact, the reason I'm getting you to kind of sit in that experience for a bit is I want you to feel a bit of the pain of what's going on. Because unless you feel a bit of the pain, there's no way you're going to start using these 5 vicious circles. Five fantastic questions. But before I give you the 5 questions, because you're going to love them when we get there. Love them. I'm sure of it. Your fellow Canadians are definitely going to like these. I can't give them to you just yet because I'm going to give you something else before we go there, another model. And this is actually going to help with productivity and focus. So for all of you in particular who went, overwhelmed, this will help. This comes from an earlier book I wrote about 10 years ago called Do More Great Work. And the starting proposition is this. There are 3 different types of work: bad work, good work, great work. Bad work, good work, great work. And what I like about this model is that as soon as I tell you everything you do can be divided into these 3 buckets, bad, good, and great work, you immediately have a sense of what I'm talking about. So let's start by this. In the chat box, here's what I would like. What do you think I'm talking about when I say bad work? What do you think bad work is? Give me your best guesses in the chat box. I'm going to call Simon up to kind of go, all right, Simon, what do you think I'm talking about when I say bad work? So Simon, what's your best guess?
I would say work that doesn't necessarily lead to the purpose or impacts that you're trying to achieve in your, sure, overall in the long term. It's those daily actions that you're trying to layer on top of each other.
Yeah, beautiful. And we're seeing some of that coming through from people here as well. Work that doesn't move the needle, low quality, seems effortful, no purpose, redundant work. All of that is absolutely on point for sure. It's worth distinguishing between quality and impact in terms of how we're measuring the work. This is actually less about quality. One of the ironies is I bet most of you are doing your bad work at a pretty high standard of quality. It's about the counterproductive. In fact, I'm going to put it more bluntly than all of you, because you're all being very nice here. Here's how I define bad work. It's the blunt definition. Bad work is the mind-numbing, soul-sucking, life-crushing work that makes you want to pick up a pen from your desk and stab yourself in the eye. It's the work where you're like, this is my one and precious life, and I am doing this. What happened here? There's some meetings you go to where you're like, well, that's 2 hours of my life that I'm never getting back again. And, I was running that meeting. It's the bureaucracy, it's the processes, it's the email, it's all of that stuff that just feels like it's sucking you dry. And I'm going to give you a simple way of remembering what bad work is. This comes from 2 ways, in fact, 2 quick ways. First is from the UK, where I lived for a while. In the UK, there's a retail store called Richer Sounds. Very successful. In fact, have been in the Guinness Book of Records for being the most profitable store per square foot. They sell high-end kind of audio equipment. In Richer Sounds, they have something called a Cut the Crap Committee. A Cut the Crap Committee. And the Cut the Crap Committee, every year they second a couple of high-potential managers onto it, and they went, look, your job is just to go out and hunt the bad work that just inevitably happens in an organization. As soon as there are people working together, bad work starts showing up. The second way I want you to remember bad work is to give you an acronym from my home country, Australia. The acronym, the word is WOMBAT, W-O-M-B-A-T. WOMBAT stands for a waste of money, bandwidth, and time. And if you're thinking to yourself, man, I can feel the occasional wombat running through my life, it means that you, like everybody, actually has bad work right now. So that's bad work. You get what that is. In summary, mind-numbing, soul-sucking, life-crushing work. Work that you're like, why am I doing this? We'll get back to that in a second. But before we get back to bad work, let me talk about the second type of work, which is good work. How would you define good work? Take your best guess in the chat box for me. And Simon, let me pull you back on. What's your best guess around how you define good work, Simon?
Feels like this is an exam. The best way I would describe good work is the work that you need to conduct on a daily basis. So you need to do it to be successful. Yeah. So it's going to inch you along and deliver things for people, but it's not going to always be the transformational work.
Yeah, you're spot on. Like Michael's just put down efficient and effective. Khaled's saying the work that gives you energy, it can be that for sure. Work a day, it has to be done from Terry. You're all spot on. In fact, the way I would, I'm seeing Matt say, check the box. Here's my articulation of exactly what you're saying, which is good work is your job description. It is productive. It is efficient. It is getting things done. It's work your boss wants you to do. It's work your boss's boss wants you to do. And that's true even if you're the boss, even if you're the founder, the CEO, there's somehow kind of expectations of what you do and how you do it. So good work is a key part of the mix. You need to be doing good work. Organizations need to be doing good work. It's part of the predictable, productive, efficient work that brings in revenue, makes customers happy, helps drive top line and bottom line results. But here's the challenge with good work. It keeps you stuck in a bit of a comfortable rut. You know when you're doing good work, this isn't you at your best. This isn't you at 9 out of 10. It's not you kind of stepping out to the edge of possibilities and adventure. It's you working the work, doing the work, being efficient, getting things done. It's you in a bit of a comfortable place. And here's a way of testing it. Let's imagine that it's Friday. Now, a year ago, I'd say, imagine it's Friday and you're driving home from work. But these days, nobody drives home from work. So it's Friday, and you're moving out of whatever your home office is into the kitchen to grab a beer or a glass of wine or a post-week celebration, because we're going to pretend for a moment that you stopped work for the week on a Friday afternoon. As you're holding that glass of good Australian Shiraz or some other beverage, you're thinking to yourself, it's been another hard week. I mean, I put in the hard yards. You know, I get up early, I sleep with my phone, I start doing email in the bed, take it into the shower with me, take it back out of the shower, get going on some stuff, but then the Zoom calls start, and then I'm kind of pulled into this Zoom call, then that Zoom call. In between the Zoom calls, or maybe during the Zoom calls, I'm doing my emails and IMs and kind of keeping up with it all. Some days I feel like I've edged a little bit behind. Some days I've edged a little bit forward. But you think to yourself, you've definitely put in your 40 hours a week or 50, or my guess is for many of you, it's closer to 60 hours a week now. And you're thinking to yourself, I've worked hard again. Man, this Chardonnay or this Shiraz, it's fantastic. But then you think to yourself, you know what? I can't really remember a single thing that I've done all week. I mean, you know you've worked hard, but it's really unclear exactly what it is that you've been doing. You think, how did I spend that 60 hours? That's a lot of time for me not to be able to exactly track. And there are probably one of two things going on. One is this: you might be suffering from early on stage something. And I'm being a bit facetious. It's probably not that. It's just the way our brain is wired. This is neuroscience 101, really kind of. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I've read a bunch of books, so I'm going to pretend I'm an expert for a brief moment. Two parts to your brain. Here you got the prefrontal cortex. It is the conscious mind. It is creative. It gives us language. It helps us understand the future. It helps us be strategic. It does all of that stuff that in so many ways makes us human. It's one of the most recent parts of the brain. It is brilliant, but it is a limited resource. And the brain's entire modus operandi is to be efficient. So when the brain is doing good work, it says, don't use up this. This is the metaphor is like, this is like a small vial of precious liquid. You don't want to use that up. Get to use the engine of the brain, the unconscious brain, right back here, right back here. They say that 90% of brain activity is back here. They say 40 to 55% of your daily work is habitual. It kind of runs mostly on automatic. And if you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I'm working really hard, and I can't really remember how I'm spending so much of my time, that's 50 to 60 hours a week, my bet is it's because you got probably a lot of good work going on for you right now. So bad work, mind-numbing, soul-sucking bureaucracy. Good work, so bad work is that. Good work is your job description. Great work is the third and final type of work. So again, in the chat box, what do you think I'm talking about when I say great work? What does great work mean? You can take your best guess at that in the chat box, and I'm going to call Simon up for the next question on his exam. Simon, what do you reckon? How would you define or talk about great work?
I mean, I would say great work fulfills you psychologically, helps you shift something in a quite a transformational fashion, and makes you feel like you've really moved on in either your thought process or you've helped other people actually shift their thought process and organizations, etc.
Beautiful. And some really good stuff coming through in the chat box. So advancing knowledge, things you remember at the end of the week from Garrett, exactly. Above and beyond, transformation. Rick's pointing to innovation, disruption, and change for sure. Is that Greg, I think, about adding new value? Brody, fulfilling, doesn't feel like work, for sure. Viola adds value to others and you learn something. I love the learning piece. You just added Viola, that's smart. I'll give you my fast definition of what great work is. It's the work that has more impact and the work that has more meaning. Work that has more impact and the work that has more meaning. You need both of those contributors to make it great work. It's got to be the Pareto effect, the 20% that makes 80% of the difference, the key thing for you to focus on that will have the most impact in the work that you're doing. That needs to exist in the context of your working life. But it's also going to be the work that lights you up, that makes you go, yeah, I get meaning from this. Yeah, I find my values reflected in this work. This is what keeps me engaged. And, I was just talking to the chief learning officer of one of the top 3 pharmaceutical companies in the world just before I jumped on this call. And we were just kind of, violently agreeing with each other around the 2 drivers of organizational life. One is, are you doing work that puts the stuff out in the world that solves a problem, that makes a difference? Do you have engaged people doing it? And if you can increase great work that has more impact, work that has more meaning, you then elevate your company. And it doesn't matter if you're running, a 300,000 person company or you're running a 5-person company. That hunger to find the right balance between bad work, good work, and great work is, in many ways, what it means to be strategic. Because this is not just a question for self-fulfillment, what's your mix of bad, good, and great, but it's your question for your organization, which is like, how are we doing? Are we happy with how we are balancing particularly good work and great work as a company? Because every company needs a mix. You can't do 100% great work, your brain just explodes. But part of what strategy is, this is one way of thinking about strategy, is like, do we have the right balance between the good work, the everyday efficient work that drives revenue, creates predictability, helps position ourselves in the marketplace, helps differentiate ourselves, and then great work, how we innovate, how we differentiate ourselves from our competitors, how we invent the future so that we are viable and we're able to thrive now and in the future. So there you go. There's the theory of bad work, good work, and great work. I know you get that in theory. Let me make this real for you. Here's what I want you to do. Pen and paper, if you don't have it already, or you can pull up a thing on your iPad, or maybe just sketch it in the air if you don't have anything handy to do it. But I just want you to draw a circle. And then I want you to think about how you spend your time at the moment, in your company at the moment, in your organization at the moment. And I want you to divide it up into how much bad work, how much good work, and how much great work you currently do. If you want to make this even more useful for you, give an example of bad, good, and great for you right now. I'm going to give you just like 90 seconds for this, so it's a fast exercise. Take your best guess. But what's your current mix between bad work, good work, and great work? And what are some examples of each? And in a minute and a half, I'm going to ask you to kind of share your percentages, and I'm going to ask Simon to do the same. So Simon, I need you to do this exercise so we can debrief it together. About a minute to go. Just 10 seconds to wrap that up. Beautiful. So here's what I would like you to do. as much as you're willing to share, and you don't have to share this because I know this might be a bit, perhaps something you want to keep private, particularly if you're sitting next to your boss or something right now, metaphorically or literally. But I'd be curious to know what your splits are. I mean, roughly, what's your bad, good, great work split in your chart? And Simon, let me pull you up and ask you, when you did that exercise, what did you notice?
Yeah, I mean, what I noticed was I was spending probably the majority of my time in good work. And I would say good work probably ends up consuming the great work sometimes. But I manage sometimes to avoid bad work. So I'm doing okay there. Nice.
So I'm seeing some numbers rolling through and appreciate people sharing this. And what I'm seeing here is really typical, which is for most people, and I've probably asked well over 100,000 people this over my time. Most people have somewhere between 10 and 25% bad work, somewhere between 20 and 80% good work, and somewhere between 0 and 25% great work. 0 and 25% great work. There are very few people who are nudging over 50% great work. In fact, when I ask people that, I go, okay, let's imagine I'm in a room. Hands up everybody who's got more than 50% great work. It's typically about 1 person in 100 sticks up their hand to say, I've got more than 50% great work. I'm seeing Anita has got 50% great work at the moment. And Anita, here's the good news in some ways. If you were hanging out with everybody live rather than doing this virtually, nobody would want to talk to you after the workshop. Luckily, everyone's going to forget that you're the person with more than 50% great work. Oh, and Fiona's joining you as well. So, oh no, she's not. 25% great for Fiona. Here's the better question, though, in all of this, because numbers are just numbers. There is no magic number. There's no magic combination where you're like, oh, I should have X% of this and Y% of that. It depends. Depends on the context, on the year, on the team, where you are in the cycle of the work that you're doing. The real question that can be helpful here is, does anybody feel like they've got too much great work right now? Anybody going, look, I have too much of the work that makes a difference, lights me up, gets me excited. You can put a Y or a yes in the chat box if you're one of those people. And that is a rare thing. I really meet very, very few people who've got that's actually the 1 in 100 people who stick up their hand. Actually, no. When I ask people who's got too much great work, I think I probably had 4 or 5 people in the entirety of my life go, I've got too much great work right now. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure that they understood the question when I asked them that. So the question is, because if it's true for you, it's true for the people that you lead and the people around you. If you're looking at your numbers and going, they're not where I want them to be, that is absolutely true for everybody else in your organization. And what I would hold for you is this question, what if we could increase the great work we do around here by 10%? At an individual level, at a team level, at a unit level, at a company level, what if we increased the great work by 10%? What difference would that make? And you can see here where we're asking a question that bridges both personal care and self-care and, are you overwhelmed? Are you trying to do too much right now? And also strategy, which is like, how do we stay focused on the stuff that really matters? And that's what I think the 5 questions can help you with. And that's what we're about to dig into. And you would think by me holding up the 5 here, you're like, okay, at last, we've waited half an hour for this. When's the 5 questions going to come? Really close, but we're not there yet, because before I give you the 5 questions, I want to talk to you really fast about the 5 ways you want to resist coaching. Even though you're thinking to yourself, man, this is the best webinar I've ever had. Michael's engaging, self-deprecating, funny, practical. Part of you is like resisting this whole idea of coaching. I want to put that elephant, or maybe it's a moose on the table, and name it. So here are the 5 ways that you resist coaching and my 5 counter arguments to it. Number 1, people go, look, I don't have time for this stuff. I think I know what you're talking about with coaching. And if it means a 30-minute or a 45-minute or an hour-long call or conversation with somebody on my team every week or 2 weeks. There's no way I have time for that. And I agree entirely. There is no way you have time for that. If you can't coach in 10 minutes or less, you do not have time to coach. And now some of you are thinking, well, that's interesting, 10 minutes or less for coaching. I like the idea of that, but I still don't have time to coach. Because even if I could coach in 10 minutes or less, I don't have time to add coaching to all the other stuff I'm doing just to try and keep my company going. And I go, exactly. You don't. Coaching is not additive, it is transformative. You need to transform what you're currently doing so that you can be more coach-like. It's not trying to pour water into a full glass. It's about trying to transform the glass and turn the water into something more interesting. Then people go, okay, but Michael, I don't want to be a coach. Like I'm a COO, or I'm a finance person, or I'm a founder, or I'm a marketer. I like those titles. I like those jobs. I like that expertise. Don't turn me into a coach. I don't want to turn you into a coach. I want you to be you, contributing to your company, being more coach-like. That's what I'm hungry for. Don't be a coach. I don't want you to be something that you're not. I want you to be more coach-like, a leadership behavior. Number 4, people go, but I don't even know what a coach is or being more coach-like is. It's just a word I've heard 1,000 times, but I don't know entirely what it actually, how you define it. So let me give you the definition, and then we're going to get into the 5 questions. Coaching is, can you stay curious a little bit longer? Can you rush to action and advice giving a little bit more slowly? Because here's what I know to be true about all of you, and I've never met you. You're all advice-giving maniacs. I mean, you are. You love it. Somebody starts talking, and within about 30 seconds, you're like, if you could just shut up now, I've got the thing I want to tell you in my brain. And that's the pattern of behavior we're breaking. Can you stay curious a little bit longer? Can you rush to action and advice giving a little bit more slowly? And why? Why would you do this? Is the 5th resistance. What's in it for me? So you can work less hard and have more impact in the work that you're doing. And if any of those 3 vicious circles rang true for you at the start, overdependent team, sense of overwhelm, loss of a disconnect from the work that matters, asking these 5 questions can help break those 3 vicious cycles. So let's do it. Let's get into the 5 questions. I'm going to do it like this. We're actually going to do some real life coaching with you. I'm going to take you through the 5 questions, but I've got a challenge for you that I want you to think about, which is, how do I do more great work? Because there's nobody here who's going, I've got too much great work. I'd like all of you to do more great work. I'm going to coach you using these questions live. I'm going to teach you the questions. We're going to explain them a little bit, and then you're going to share your answers in the chat if you'd like, or just write them down personally if you'd rather not share. But what I want to kind of set you up with, and Simon, I'm going to be asking you these questions live, so I need you to be thinking about this as well. It's like, if you could put your time and attention onto something at the moment, and this might be something that you've already been thinking about today. If you had to name something as kind of like your great work project, if you had more time, more energy, more resources, what would you focus on? What would you commit to? What would you get into? It's like name that great work challenge, that great work project. What's that going to be? Coralie's saying she's liking the format. Thanks, Coralie. I'm enjoying it too. And we're going to jump into it. So what's the first question? It's the kickstart question. If you buy into this whole idea of not being able to coach in 10 minutes, if you can't coach in 10 minutes or less, you got nothing, then you're going to love the kickstart question, because it's a way of accelerating into a real conversation that matters fast. It gets you into the juicy stuff. So the kickstart question is this: what's on your mind? What's on your mind? And what that does, this is why it works so well. It's an open question. It's big, it's wide. And it says to that person, don't tell me everything. Don't tell me anything. Tell me the thing that you're excited about, or worried about, or nervous about, or anxious about. Let's get into it. What's on your mind? How do we best use this precious time that we have together? So the broad question is, how do you do more great work? And when I ask you what's on your mind, what comes up for you, I'd love to see your answers in the chat box there. What's on your mind when you think about how do you do more great work, what a great work project might be for you? And Simon, let me call you up, question as well. When you think about you doing more great work, what's on your mind?
I think particularly in relation to the work that we're doing here and the work we're doing through the Growth Catalyst with CEOs and leaders, I think my thought is around how do we make this even bigger and how do we make this even more impactful?
Nice. I love that. It's like, it's already great. I mean, this format, this experience, the little bit I'm seeing of it, I'm loving. But it's like, how do you grow it? How do you scale it? How do you make it mean something more? So, and Khalid's supporting his brother in arms there. Good answer, Simon. So Terry's saying things like stakeholder engagement and learning about what makes an impact. And we'll see some other answers coming through in the chat box. If you're willing to share, it's an open invitation. You're more than willing not to share. But here's what I would say. By sharing, you get to share what you're up to with your colleagues who are on the call with you. And there's not only a shared wisdom to be had here, but a kind of collective understanding about what you're all up against, because you're in different businesses and you're all up against similar challenges. So there's a way that you will feel more supported by both sharing and seeing what's being shared in the chat box here. So nice ones coming through. Like I like Rick's, how do we impact more entrepreneurs? That's a really nice statement as well. Michael's developing relationships that generate outcomes and trust as an ecosystem. And what you're noticing as we get to these statements, and this is exactly how they should be at the moment, is at the moment they're fairly high level. They're fairly kind of big picture. Now, here's the thing. Like, I don't even know who these people are. Michael K. and Rick D. and Terry R. I don't know who these people are. But quite frankly, there's one part of my brain that goes, oh, I've got answers for all of them. Oh, Fiona, look, I've written a book on courage. I can do courage. Ah, Michael, I've got a mate who's perfect on outcomes and relationships. Let me give you some top tips around doing that. And there's one part of me that is already wanting to leap in and give answers and provide solutions because, let's face it, that's how I add value to this conversation. You know, and we've all got that driver to, like, I want to be helpful, I want to add value, and I want this to be fast. So let me just jump in and try and fix it. But if I was doing that, I'd be making a grave mistake. Because at the moment, we don't even know what the real problem is. I'm going to share questions 2 and 3 to show you how to help getting a little deeper in that. I'm going to share, and I'm going to give you a script that you'll be able to use immediately to improve almost any conversation that you have. So question number 2 is the focus question. What's the real challenge here for you? What's the real challenge here for you? And the power of this question, actually the presumption of this question is we spend way too much time in our organizational life trying to solve the first thing that shows up rather than the important thing that shows up. We get seduced into thinking that the first challenge that gets presented is the real challenge, and it almost never is. So how this question is written really matters. Let me take you through it. I could ask somebody just, what's the challenge here? And that's okay, but it's a little bit kind of asking for a repeat of the same answer. What's the challenge here? As soon as you add the word real, it becomes more effective. What's the real challenge here? Because it says to the other person, look, there's more than one thing going on. There's all sorts of different avenues we could take to try and figure this out and solve it. What do you think is at the heart of it? What's the real challenge? But I want to see some of the magic happens, perhaps all the magic happens when you add for you at the bottom there. What's the real challenge here for you? Because when that happens, you swing the spotlight from the problem to the person solving the problem. And the magic in that is that suddenly they're now part of the ecosystem and you're helping them learn and grow whilst also solving the problem. So what's the real challenge here for you is actually a very powerful way to drive growth and drive focus at the same time. And as Sandra's saying, it's going to get you closer to the real pain point. What we're going to do is we're going to combine that with the best coaching question in the world. I know, it's big talking. I'm going to give you the acronym. Here's the acronym, AWE. So it is literally an awesome question. Here's what I'm going to ask you in the chat box. What do you think AWE stands for? What's your best guess? It's a 3-word question, AWE. If you had to guess what AWE stands for, what do you reckon it might be? Take your best shot at it. Let's see who lands on it first. I'm not going to ask Simon because I think Simon already knows. He's already read the book. And Anita crosses the finish line first. Well done. Anita, Jen, Matt, you're all seeing it. And what else? And what else? I know. It doesn't sound like the best coaching question in the world. It sounds slightly anticlimactic. But here's the thing. Their first answer is never their only answer. It's rarely their best answer. And what else is your opportunity to dig deeper and get closer to what really matters. Dallas, I like, are we evolving? It's not the answer I was looking for, but it's a good question nonetheless. So here's the script. I'm going to get you to do this work by yourself. We're going to have 3 or 4 minutes because I'm going to coach Simon using the script as well. But I know what's on your mind because you entered some of the things into the chat box there. And if you haven't entered it, you've written it down. Here's what I want you to ask yourself. So what's the real challenge here for you? When you look at that challenge, and at the moment it's a bit broad, what's the real challenge here for you? Well, what's the real challenge? But what's the real challenge here for you? And then ask yourself, what else? What else is a challenge? And then ask yourself, what else is a challenge? And then go, right, so all that being true, what's the real challenge here for me? What's the real challenge here for me? This is actually real work. You're going to sweat a bit as you go through this. And there's going to be one part of you that's going to want to kind of opt out of it and go, I can't be bothered. But I encourage you because this is going to actually help create a bit of a breakthrough in the work that you're doing. And we're going to try it out and see if I can pull it off by doing a little bit of live coaching with Simon. So Simon, come on up on screen for me if you wouldn't mind. And Simon, will you just give us a restatement of when you said what's on your mind before? Can you just give me a restatement of what that is?
Yeah, it's about programming for working with entrepreneurs, business owners to scale their business, about how do you make that even more impactful? How do you make it even bigger?
Perfect. And you can just feel that that's a really great statement of intent for this as a program overall. But here's what I'm curious, Simon. When you think about that, what's the real challenge here for you in that scaling?
So in being asked that question, which I haven't been asked before today, it's not about who's on this call. So the people who are on this call are those people who have already engaged and want to engage in great work, which you talk about, Michael. It's about how do you actually convince other people that they need to engage in great work. So in our line of work, there aren't enough people, I think, as leaders of businesses who are aware of the needs to engage in great work. So, some of the names I'm seeing pop up on the chat are even some of my UK friends who went through the Big Journey program that we had back in the UK. And they are also those who do recognize the need and want to spend time on great work. So I think for me, it's about how do we actually create that momentum around other people recognizing and wanting to spend more time on great work.
Nice. So as I'm just speaking to everybody listening in now, as I hear Simon talk, and forgive me for talking behind your back, Simon, I hear him talking about we need to do this and we need to do that. And that's all great and not what I'm interested in. Because here's what I want to know. I hear that, Simon. And what's the real challenge for you in figuring that out?
Yeah, very good question. I think being able to demonstrate to people here in particular, I guess, in this province, that this is a program of work that is required and is valued. So that's something that we're all working on and I'm working on in particular.
Nice. I love it. So one is kind of proving the value of this program to other people in the province. What else is a challenge for you around this bigger goal of scaling?
So one challenge is actually, what do we even mean by that term? So there's a lot of myth around what we mean by scaling up and a scale up and a high growth company and all sorts of things. So I think that's a huge challenge. I think money is a big challenge. Money always is. These are companies that are trying to grow, but they're therefore investing the majority of their resources in that growth process and not necessarily the growth of their leadership. So,
Yeah.
You therefore need to find those resources elsewhere to potentially support that growth.
And let me interrupt you. I hear that piece around money being a challenge, but what's the challenge in that for you in terms of what you're trying to achieve here?
If I had enough money, I'd be a philanthropic donor.
Right. So it's finding the resources perhaps to fund this.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And if I had to you've talked about a number of different things around bring the right people in and bring the right money in and some stuff for you as well. If you had to kind of drop down and kind of give me the heartbeat for, if you could only pick one thing right now, what's the real challenge here for you in terms of wanting to increase the impact of this program?
Yeah, it's a really hard question, and these shouldn't be easy questions for sure. And I think mine would go back to, how do we open up more individuals' eyes, leaders' eyes, to the need to have time out of the business and work on the business, not just in it.
Yeah, beautiful. So, Simon, thank you. I know you're kind of being put on the spot here and kind of sweating a little bit. And in fact,
No worries.
what was brilliant about that is we got to watch Simon work. One of our philosophies around coaching is to be lazy, meaning if I'm doing all the work in the coaching conversation, me, the coach, me, the leader, something's gone wrong. And those little moments of silence as you watch Simon try and figure this stuff out in his head, that's it. That's the work. That's Simon getting new insights as to what's going on, new clarity about what matters. Oh, excuse me. So this is the power of this conversation, which is by asking that question, what's the real challenge here for you, and staying curious about it. So often the challenge actually shifts and changes and drops down to be a little deeper. Simon started off broadly, my language, but we need to scale this program. And it dropped down to going, how do we make a compelling case to persuade people to invest time out of their business to join this program? It's a totally different challenge, but becomes much more real and much more tangible. So that's 3 of the 5 questions done. The kickstart question, what's on your mind? The focus question, what's the real challenge here for you? And the or question, and what else? We're going to stay in the same conversation, but I've got another question I want to share with you, which is the foundational question, which is, what do you want? What do you want? This can be really helpful to get grounded in the, I know the outcome that I'm after. I know the result I'm going for. Because once people see that outcome, once people own what they want, it often is the generator of action and commitment. So even as you work through this and you think to yourself, all right, I know what the real challenge is for me, I'd be curious to know, what does that tell you about what you really want? What are you really hungry for? What's the outcome, the success, that next thing that the challenge tells you is real for you? So again, if you wish, sharing it in the group chat, really powerful. You could share the real challenge for you and what you want, as much as you want. The choice is yours. Simon, let me pull you on and ask you, so if the real challenge gets us closer around, making the case for people to take time out of work, what do you want? What do you want in this?
I think ultimately it's about making this a flagship for people who would want to come and flock to this. And I talk about this in the province in particular, but how do we make this something that people feel they have to and need to be a part of and want to be a part of, and actually even potentially move their businesses here because they want to do that and need to. So I think that flagship approach of the way that they could work with our ecosystem, the impressive people that we have within it, would be something that I'd be sort of wanting to champion.
Nice. And this could be just me projecting, but for everybody listening in, as I hear Simon, the shift in energy from where it's the start, which is a bit kind of a little tired, I've got to scale, how do we scale? to actually getting clear about this needs to be a flagship program. It needs to be a lighthouse. It needs to bring in the people that would resonate with this work. That feels like a different place. It feels like a richer conversation. It feels that if I was to guess which call to action Simon is going to respond to, is it scale this or is it make it a flagship? It feels like the latter, and you could feel that coming out through the question. And if we had more time, and if I was coaching Simon, I'd go, man, I love that. Flagship in Alberta, absolutely. So let me ask you this. What's the real challenge for you in turning this from just a program to a flagship program? What's the challenge here for you? And you could see how I'm just recycling that question to get deeper and wiser about it. I'm going to share the fifth question in just a minute. I'm going to tell you two things that I want. I want you to go check out my website, mbs.works, in part because I literally put up a new website there yesterday. And I'm so excited that I want some people to go and see it. And actually, there's two reasons you might choose to go there. One is I've got a new download there, which is like the first step in mastering a hard change. But the thing that might be interesting for you is actually a free program called The Year of Living Brilliantly. It's 52 teachers, 52 key lessons on how to be a more effective human being in life, leader, strategist, human being. It's totally free. If that sounds interesting, mbs.works is the place to go. If it doesn't sound interesting, don't go there. Here's the fifth and final question, and it's actually a way of beginning to wrap up this conversation. You know, I've been talking about an hour. You've been contributing through the chat. Simon's been contributing. I want you to remember. I want you to learn. I want you to have taken something away from this. And we've covered a lot. We had the check-in question, how focused will you be? We had the 3 vicious circles, you know, overwhelm, overdependent team, overwhelm, disconnected from work that matters. We talked about the 3 types of work, bad work, good work, great work. And you did the circle to kind of do a little audit on how you're going. Then we got into the coaching and sharing the 5 questions. So my question for you of all of it, if you could only pick one thing, what's been most useful or most valuable for you from this webinar? What's been most useful or most valuable for you from this webinar? And I'd love to see that in the chat box, because you sharing your learning will help others see the learning as well. Simon, let me call you up. What was most useful or most valuable for you in all of this?
I mean, first of all, I think being asked those questions, I've never been asked those questions before. I'm often on the other side of the fence trying to ask those questions. So
yeah, totally.
It's actually really refreshing to be asked those questions and to engage in a deeper thought process. I mean, people probably on this call were looking at me and going, hey, he's spending some time thinking about this, and that wasn't gamed. I was actually thinking a lot about this. So I think that opportunity just to take a breath and think a little bit differently.
I love it. This is the power of curiosity. You ask a question, and it just opens up this moment, this heartbeat, where you get to stop and go, wait, let me reorient. Let me actually think. I know for so many people here, because of where their company's at and where the economy's at and what we're all up against, action feels like the only answer. It's busy, busy, busy. There's nobody here is not feeling a bit overwhelmed by it all. But what curiosity brings and the power of asking questions allows you to think, take a breath, and orient to the stuff that matters most, and to orient to the stuff that will nourish you rather than deplete you. So lots of wonderful things flowing through in the chat box. I'm glad it proved to be so useful for you. I'm liking what Jen's taking away. This is the kind of the meta learning, if it's there for you, which is watching how I presented this. So you're welcome to take and borrow and adapt any of the techniques I've used to learn to be a better facilitator. There's all sorts of things I did to break some of the rules to make this more compelling and more engaging for you. Everything from that check-in question at the start, to using handwritten slides, to really using the chat box, to having Simon be a co-host with me and breaking up the monologue. All of these things are ways to make this hour go faster for you. Hey, Simon, let me pull you back in. Our time is all but done. What do you want to do to kind of wrap things up and get a sense of completion here?
I just want to obviously, first of all, say thank you very much, Michael, for sharing with you and sharing us and asking these important questions and these models, because they're definitely models that we can take away, very practical. And it's been excellent time, and I hope those people on the call have really enjoyed what it is that you've had to say. All I would say is that, this is the Growth and Resiliency Speaker Series, which has been brought to you by Alberta Innovates, the province's innovation engine. And we're delighted to be working with Alberta Innovates through the Growth Catalyst program, there to spark energy and excitement around a scaling and growth strategy for CEOs and leadership teams. So thank you for being a part of this, Michael. It means a lot. And, great to have you in Canada as an Aussie, and super excited by what these tools can actually bring. Perfect.
Thanks, everybody. I really enjoyed being part of it with you all today. Thanks for having me along. And Khaled and Simon, thanks for helping me. And Shane and the team behind the scenes, thanks for your technical help as well.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you, Michael.
Bye-bye.